So it is Thursday morning. We finished a day and a half in Maranello. This is a very, very different thing, and I'm going to try to explain it to you because we could not bring any working cameras into Maranello. Everything we had was taped up with like that, okay? We were at kind of a two-part thing. The first part was a technology and innovation workshop, and the second part is the capital markets day. The first part they explained to the tech guys. The second part, they explain it to the finance and business guys. And this is very different because normally when we're in Maranello, in Ferrari and so on, we're driving cars. In this case, we weren't driving cars, except we weren't driving anything we can show you for a while. But what's interesting here is this is arguably one of the most important things that's ever happened for Ferrari. And what was explained to us kind of shows the direction they're going to go. It's cold out here. And the vision that they have and the longevity they expect of it, okay? So let's start here. Basically, this all falls under the Ferrari Elettrica program, which is the name they currently have, but have not committed to, for their new car. Now, let's make this clear. A lot of people have been seeing the test mules and camouflage running around Maranello. And we're going to explain that that might not be happening that much anymore for another thing we just saw that just announced like 2 days ago. What we do know, based on what the bosses told us, these are their words. 4 wheels, 4 seats-ish, 4 or 5, 4 doors, 1 steering wheel. That's all they told us in terms of what the actual body is going to be like. Okay. Now, the Ferrari Elettrica program is developed inside what they call the E-building. Now, the E-building is not just Elettrica. It's about innovation. It's about environment. It's about all these other things. But it is a big 2-story building, 2 or 3-story building, and it is a manufacturing facility. So this is a very, very big commitment. Okay. We're walking through that manufacturing facility, and we rode through first the battery production area. And what they've chosen in this case is, and this is where it got interesting because this is where they first told us that this was not a 2-seater car. They are using a modular battery system using cells from a company in South Korea. And what this allows them to do is do what they call in-the-field swaps for batteries, meaning it doesn't have to go back to Maranello necessarily if there's a problem or if they want to change. These systems are built for change. It's 15 different modules, each of which has X number of cells, which we have in the data. So it's 1, 6, 6, so that's 13, and then 2 above those, which they say are positioned to go under the rear seats. So that's the first time they confirmed this is a rear seat configuration, so we're thinking 4 seats because you're not going to put 5 in, okay? They did not at that time confirm that it was 4 doors, but they did that later on officially-ish. So this is going to be a fully electric, 4-door, 4-seat, 4-wheel drive, 4-wheel steering new car. Anyway, okay, this is going to be kind of all over the place because I could not talk about things as I went through, so I'm going to try to explain them as I go because it's all kind of all over the place in my mind. So we first walked through, first things we saw were what they were calling one of 3 Italian marriages, right? They were marrying the cells to the modules. Each of the modules has its own intelligent system, and then it's all run together by another system. Then we walked through and they talked about where they married the motors, which they still call engines, which is kind of confusing to a lot of us. What they say is engine, which you might hear in our discussions, is actually the electric motor. And there are 2 electric motors in the front, 2 electric motors in the back. Now, the electric motors in the front, and this is really interesting, it's really geeky. The electric motors in the front, they each have they have an inverter, and that's what controls everything, sucks the power back in and so on. But the electric motors in the front are, they can decouple so that they are or are not at any given time powering the wheels if needed, individually. This is done, it's a physical disconnection, okay? So you've got, and it's really beautiful. I mean, they make electric motors look good. All of this is designed in-house and produced in-house largely. So what they are doing, and this is part of their Ferrari, I'm really jumping around here. This is part of what the Ferrari is forever thing. There's a huge percentage of Ferraris that are still on the road. They cannot guarantee that unless they control production and distribution and design and so on. So this is that commitment, and that's why the E-building is there. It's a massive commitment to the future. So they can change all these things as needed. Okay, so we went from the batteries and we went into the front motors. 2 motors, each of which has their own intelligent systems. Then we went to the rears, 2 motors, rear wheel steering that's physical, okay? So it's not just torque vectoring in the sense of like we're adding and lowering power. There's a physical movement in the rear wheels, okay? So it'll go this way. If you're going slow speeds, it'll go that way. And they'll also be individual. So if we see, for example, a graph, which we can't show you unless they release the images. If you see a graph of a car going around a curve and you see the forces and the directions of the 4 wheels, they can all be different. And these are physical directions. This is not just braking on one side, adding gas on the other side, or electric on the other side. It's a physical change, okay? And these physical changes have to happen extremely fast. So for example, when we asked the engineer about the front suspension and powertrain, it's a physical, it goes in and out in microseconds. When we asked him how fast it goes, it's like a shotgun, and it's gonna go back and forth as quickly as needed. So it's very, very fast. On the rear, one of the things that they did that they've never done before was they have what is effectively an independent rear platform or module for the back. They do this because this car just doesn't produce the same amount of noise as normal Ferraris do. So all the other stuff that we would not hear now gets annoying, like we're hearing road noise and we're hearing stuff like that, which normally we wouldn't be paying attention because we'd be looking at it and hearing things along with an engine, right? That's not there. So what they decided to do was they put, think of it as the whole rear, the little rear box. If you've got the chassis here, and then you've got this area here that includes the rear motors, the rear inverter, the 2 rear wheels, that's all now in a separate little component, which is of hollow forged material, and it's all isolated with like bushings, and think of engine bushings, okay? So it's got like 1, 2, 3, 4, either 6 or 8 of those, and that is what's addressing the rear. They're very, very like key about the noise here. And because they have dropped the noise, because it's electric, they now have other issues they have to deal with. So there are positives and negatives. Positives here is that they're able to build everything with an amazingly low center of gravity. There's a lot less weight comparative, because obviously with all the batteries, there's more weight, right? So they're taking advantage of efficiencies in weight and positioning wherever they can. An interesting thing, the chassis, and this is the first time the chassis has been released, okay, ever. This is the first time they've shown it. You're gonna see that it's very, very forward in terms of where the driver sits. Surprisingly forward to a lot of us. Now again, what we've seen are not test beds, but production ready chassis. Okay, but we're not seeing, or we're not showing the rest of it, so we can't really explain that. So there's a lot of different design elements and engineering elements that they're bringing into this, and part of that is because they're using different people to do the design of this vehicle. They say it is not a supercar, and it's very flexible. So what we know, it's not a supercar, and this is, okay, there you go. I'm going to diverge again. The reason it's not a supercar is because when they look at what the electric systems can bring to the game, if you look at this level of Ferrari-ness, okay, and then if they add, and this is like the supercars and sports cars and so on, if you put electrics here, it doesn't do a lot. You have a lot of additional power, but you have a lot of weight. You have to address handling. So that's why they don't think the electrics are best used here. Instead, they're best used kind of here. If the Pursang was here, if they had a graph, okay, if the Pursang was kind of here, this Elettrica project was kind of above that. And they felt that this type of vehicle, which again we now know and can say 4 doors, 4 seats. I can't say 4 seats because we don't know if this can be 4 or 5, but I don't really think it's going to be 5. Most of us don't think it's going to be 5. So a more flexible vehicle. Think Puro Sangue-ish in terms of vision, but maybe not in terms of look yet. What we can tell you is that all the test mule stuff we saw, they're really, they were just kind of messing with people. So we've talked about the front, we've talked about the rear, we've talked about the batteries. Noise. One thing they wanted to be very clear about and even with being clear, they were still confusing, is this is not artificial sound. Okay, they do not want artificial sound. And their answer to this is basically sticking your head into the engine, motor, gears, powertrain, and using that sound. Okay, so what they did is they put what they call a sensor inside the powertrain and inside the whole thing, and they're drawing from that. They were not super clear on this. Well, they did not consistently say whether or not it could be amplified or not amplified, whatever. The best explanation they were giving is think of an electric guitar and think of an acoustic guitar. An acoustic guitar uses the cavity and airflow and pressure to create the sound we hear. If you do that in an electric guitar, you're not going to hear very much. You need the electric systems to bring that sound and therefore that emotion out. That is the way they're explaining it. They are key in saying this is not artificial. However, they are not exactly discussing at the moment that we can talk about whether they'll be amplifying. There was a discussion on are they synthesizing or not, and this came from someone who was a musician, a Japanese guy. So their definition of playing with sound is a little bit different. The Japanese guy was saying, no, if you're an electric guitar player or whatever, you need this. But then the Ferrari guy was saying, no, it's not artificial. These are two different things because it depends on how you look at, as an example, electric guitars. Are they either artificial or not? And are they any less emotional or not? Okay, so this is where Ferrari's coming from that. Okay, so this is part of a 3-stage process. The next stage we're going to see early 2026 and then later on in 2026. So it's going. The car is nailed down. By the way, the body, this is not that they're still figuring it out. Okay, the body, what they call, they had a word for it, frozen. Design is frozen. So they know what it's going to be like. They have driven it. They have shown it. You would not believe the NDAs we have for this. This is part of their process, okay? And that process began when we arrived. But you can actually say it began a day before because the day before was when they launched their new driving test facility. It's called eVortex. What that does is it allows them to do a lot more testing on the grounds of Maranello besides Fiorano. And they've got like rubble strips, they've got potholes. They didn't have that in Fiorano, right? Heck no. They've got a banked curve, very heavily banked, but very short. So it's not like a huge sweeping curve. It's like you go in really hard, wham, wham. Okay, so it's not a high-speed testing thing. It's really a real-life testing thing. And what this will do is one of the things they said is that it's less intrusive to the community. And if you've ever been to Fiorano, you know that you can haul in a lot of certain places, certain areas. But then when you take this curve, you got to be off the gas because if you're not off the gas, when you make that curve, your exhaust is aimed at the town or aimed at the people who live near the thing. And so we're always very, very careful to not do that. So they do have, number one, they don't want to impinge or whatever on the local community. And number two, they just need to test cars that can't be photographed by other people. Because we've driven the camouflage different cars around, and we do get attention doing it. So, the latest test mule looks like it might be like a shooting brake look or something. But none of that, you never know what it's going to be because they'll be testing, because this is an electric platform which has all this different flexibility. The chassis itself is flat, effectively, almost. So you can put kind of any test shell over it if you want, right? If you're testing rear suspension, front suspension, you're testing how the rear moves and so on. You're testing what it does in holes. But that can all be done now. And the asphalt on the new eVortex place is like fresh and brand new. We're probably the first people that went on it. So they didn't even tell us we were going to go. They did not tell us we were going to go. We just kind of showed up, so I don't have a lot of photos for it. Okay, now how does this all put together in Ferrari's vision? There was a really good comment made this morning at breakfast, actually, which is what the e-building allows. It will allow them to develop on their own time with their own facility. It may mean that they're not going to be forced to push these cars, which Ferrari doesn't do that anyway. And because everything is controlled by, so the design is theirs, the development is theirs, the production to a large extent is theirs only. And if you look at the market now, we're seeing a flood of people pushing electrics very hard to markets that aren't ready for them. So the potential for this level of commitment by Ferrari with e-building, eVortex, and everything else is that they can maybe handle this on their own terms as to being forced by the market to do things. So that's a positive. The other thing is that, I mean, Ferraris are clearly niche products, right? Developing a car like this, it is arguable that it will need to see more numbers than the other cars. They call this a range vehicle, by the way, which means it's going to be a regular range, I think. Regular run vehicle. It's not limited. It's not whatever. Think puro sangue in the sense that it can appeal to more people. It's priced higher than a lot of the other ones, so you can't exactly get it even though it's meant for more use. The other thing is, in their little graph of things that I hope they send us, if you've got the sports cars and stuff here in terms of efficiency, power, and whatever, and usability, then we had the puro sangue on a different line completely. This was on a completely different line further above that. So we do not have pricing. We do not have more information that we can give out. A lot of our stuff is very, very technical, very, very geeky. So what we're coming away from this, and what's being like discussed like in 15 minutes, is a little bit more stuff that we'll be allowed to discuss. And what we're coming away with, and people say this on a very low-hanging fruit level, is that Ferrari's late to the game. No, Ferrari has a different target. A lot of these brands, they're not operating in the same way that the other people are. This is different. Their vision is generational. Their vision is kind of forever. We're not looking at now, they say. We're not looking at a year down the line. We're looking at 10 years down the line. And if you see the commitment they made in the e-building, in the e-Vortex, by the way, 4 months for them to do. Just under 2 kilometers of everything from bumpy roads to holes to kind of rocky, the things they used to test flatness of the body as you're going over bad humps, which is great because of the 4-wheel drive, 4-wheel steering, 4-wheel independent, everything on this new Elettrica. So what this tells you is that this is going to be much more flexible, heavily skewed towards comfort. The other thing they did here, and because of this, is if you look at the Maranello in the current cars, you've already separated source of power, electric or hybrid or whatever, for the other cars, with driving mode. Within the driving mode, the level of comfort tended to be keyed in based on if you chose to drive like crazy or drive in the city or whatever. That is now separate as well. So there's an increasing level of flexibility that they have brought to this new car, the Elettrica. Basically, that's what we've done today. There's a lot of other little things that we're going to be talking about. What's really interesting, which we're going to get to in a different way, is the hypersail. And the hypersail is interesting because they took the rear inverter motor package and put it to run the racing boat system in a really interesting way. So anyway, the point of this is that they're developing at a level that is not small. All the new buildings, all the new facilities, the commitment to doing this all on their own without suppliers in a large sense, the commitment to put the battery system in such a way that if that battery supplier stops in 10 years, they have planned for that. They can swap it out. They can swap different systems. They can swap the entire system. They can swap small cells. So it's very, very flexible. And this all goes back to Ferraris are forever. Most of them are still on the road. Most of them are still enjoying happy use by people. And how do you do that in an electrical system or an electric car system where things normally get kind of used up and they just get no longer usable or they just change systems? This is what they're building, and they can only build that because they will control everything. And they already have multiple suppliers ready. And if, for example, they have a different technology for batteries, they've built in that system to change that. So there's a lot of really, really deep technical stuff that we're going to be going into another time when I can read off it and explain a little bit better. But right now, what we are coming away with is basically that Ferrari has decided that this Elettrica is a product that will deliver Ferrari's emotion and driving experience the way they want it. And because of that, they have to build the whole system below it and around it to ensure that it meets the same standards of drivability, of continuity, of Ferraris of foreverness. And that's a huge, massive undertaking, which explains why they have capital markets day, right? Because they got to tell people, you know what, this is what we're going to do. Trust us. So there. And that's been a very busy day in Maranello. We're going to see what Ferrari's going to do in the next 6 months.